Hello. So today on our journey through the gene keys and the gates, we're going to look at gate or gene key 9. Specifically, we're going to look at it through this lens of how does this gate or gene key impact me? And how does it impact the collective? So whether you have it defined in either your human design or gene key chart, or even if you don't, because when the sun is transiting these archetypal energies, which is what the gates and the gene keys are, they do impact us, and we might see this energy popping up in the collective. So how can we support ourselves during it, as well as how can we support ourselves if we have this active in us? My name is Juliana, and I am a therapeutic counselor. I'm also a quantum human design specialist, and I just love talking about the gates and the gene keys and the archetypes and how they really impact us on a energetic and psychological level. So we'll start on the human design side, and then we'll move over to the gene key side. So gate 9 in the human design body graph is in the sacral center, and it connects to the root via gate 52. And this is a part of the collective circuit, specifically on the logic side. So the name of this gate in quantum human design language is the Gate of Convergence. And on the traditional human design side, it is the energy for detail. And this gate on the higher expression of it is really the energy to stay concentrated and focused on detail, while also having perspective to know how to keep the energy moving. So also holding the big picture at the same time, the ability to kind of move back and forth between the two. But what can happen on the shadow side of this gate is that you can lose sight on the big picture, and then you start focusing on what is directly in front of you, and you're not sure what matters and what doesn't matter. And so you can get caught up and lost in this endless list of tiny little details that end up not getting you anywhere. But when you can stay focused on the important details while holding the bigger picture, you can see where the energy needs to move to get where you want to go. So the gene key name for this, Richard Rudd calls it the power of the infinitesimal. And I love Richard Rudd's philosophical language and new words that I don't know. So I had to look up what this word means, because I know infinite means like vast and expansive and like endless possibilities. And infinitesimal actually means the opposite of the infinite, which means tiny. And also, if you think about it in this way, it means that tiny can also be infinite. Like you can get lost in the tiny little details of things as well. So on the shadow side of this, the shadow name of this gene key is called inertia. And this is where we can get overwhelmed by small details. And that overwhelm of these small details can zap our energy, right? When you get so focused on something that is so tiny, getting it perfect, it can be all consuming and take all of your energy out of you. And when we do that, it's like we place all our focus on what doesn't really matter in the big picture of things. This is where we can get caught and easily distracted and stuck. It's like we continue on this, on like one of those like hamster wheels, right? We just keep doing the same thing and the same thing. On the other end of the spectrum of the shadow of inertia is that we get so focused on the future that we actually fail to see what is right in front of us that needs tending. That like actually we need to take the steps in order to get where we're going, but we're so focused on the future that we don't have any, we can't see it. And when we're in this shadow, it can drain all hope and enthusiasm from us and distracts us from what truly matters. You see this a lot in our political systems where they talk, right? Coming up to elections, they talk about the big picture and what they see in the image, and then they get elected and we don't see any forward changes. It's kind of just like the political party then tends to spin in a similar pattern as to where the other political party was spinning. Maybe they make small changes, but that grand vision is kind of lost because there's so many details that I imagine all of this stuff needs to happen, potentially, maybe. And so this shadow of inertia can show up in one of two ways. It can show up in this energy of like reluctance, where it's almost this paralysis, freezing state, where there's just this inability to do anything, right? Paralysis. I don't even know where to start. Or it can show up in this constant moving and diverting yourself. So shifting and changing and looking for momentum in any other place, but not able to find it. And it just gets you kind of stuck in this never-ending loop, right? Of small details trying to get somewhere and not being able to get anywhere. So the gift, when we move from the shadow to the gift of Gene Key 9, we move to the gift of determination. And literally, this is what you need to move through the shadow of inertia. It's like, when I think of determination, it's this, like, I imagine like this, a little kid trying to learn how to crawl or stand, right? And they've been trying and they fall and they bump their heads and they fall. And then you see something shift in them where they go, they're gonna do it no matter what. It's like something shifts in their brains where they're like, they've tried it enough times one way and they're like, okay, I'm actually gonna do it this time. And this is kind of the key to understanding the journey between inertia and determination, is that our bodies, our brains, and our stomachs and our nervous systems have all of these neurotransmitters that fire. And they fire on a certain thread or roadway in our bodies. And when we have a certain way of doing something over a long period of time, they're kind of like superhighways, right? There's superhighways of these neurotransmitters firing back and forth. When you are trying to do or working towards doing something different, like changing from the shadow of inertia into the gift of determination, what's happening inside of you is that you are actually taking that super highway of neurotransmitters, and you are intentionally directing them on a new path. And this new path may be like an old grown over dirt road. And so when we walk down, or we try to drive down an old grown over dirt road, we need to drive rather slowly at first, right? We need to watch where the potholes are. We might need to take it more slowly. We don't even know if our car is going to make it down this dirt road. But what happens is once you start to drive, intentionally turn off of the superhighway and drive down this dirt road, the dirt road starts to get more worn in. It starts to get more worn in. And this is what happens when you shift, when you begin shifting from inertia into determination, right? You start to go, okay, it didn't work that time. Oh, I'm back on the hamster wheel. Oh, there I am again, back on the hamster wheel, right? But you're continually attempting this new route. And eventually that determination is going to click in and you're going to go, no, I'm sticking onto this route. So in some ways, this gene key, this energy, this archetype is really, it's a brain and a body thing. And it's the intention behind it of what makes it work. So there's this quote by Aleister Crowley that says, every intentional act is a magical act. And that's because intention is huge, right? Intention is heart energy. When you intend something, you are energetically putting out in your energetic paths a new path that you are going to take. And so intention is really the first thing. If you want to move from the shadow of inertia to determination, you got to go, okay, I'm intending to start pulling back and noticing what details are actually important and what is not. And can I actually take the steps to move me forward on my path? I'm going to put this intention out there for myself, right? And that intention is what fuels us forward. Even if we end back at the beginning again, we're not at the beginning because we've taken new steps. You've already driven down a part of that dirt road again, right? You're already developing new neural transmitters for yourself, just like the baby does. Every time it goes to stand up or crawl and it bonks his head or he falls on the floor, right? He's forming new neural transmitters. This is exactly the same thing. And so understanding that the intention and then the practice of taking this step is what gets you into determination. And knowing that it might take effort at first as you start to deepen the grooves of the new neurotransmitters that you are implementing in your mind and your body. And so watch for this in the collective, right? You're going to see this in the collective. I mentioned the political system. You're also going to see this in how people will, I know someone who is very detail oriented about how books are laid out, right? Or how margins need to match exactly. And while that is a really brilliant thing to watch how design elements come together, there is a level to which you get so sucked into the design element that then your project, whether it's a book or a website or a flyer, never gets out there because you get stuck in the inertia of the focus on the details. This can happen too in places where, because this is a logical circuit, right? It's very logical. This place is looking for proof. It wants to know, it wants to see the proof that it's going forward. And so those of us who are more knowing, who just have this inner knowing, sometimes we can get caught up in this need to prove ourselves or have the details or have the articles to back up what we actually just know inside. So I hope that helped. I know that while I don't have this gate or gene key in my own profile, I know people who do. And it can be a challenging place for people. So if you have this and you find it challenging, please give yourself the biggest love and heart energy that you possibly can, because these shadows, right? These shadows that exist in us and exist in our collective consciousness, they're here as a method and a way for us to evolve. And so even if you're in the shadow of one of these gates or gene keys, instead of seeing it as something that is bad or wrong, same out there in the collective, it's time for us to look at it as an opportunity for evolution. How can we intend to make shifts in ourselves, in our own embodied experience, so that it then goes out and it creates ripples in the collective? So if you did like this video, please, I would really appreciate it if you liked, shared, or subscribed. And you can always join my newsletter to stay up to other updates. If you go down to the description, you'll see my website in there. Thank you so much for watching.